Hi, I'm David Miller, and I'd like to welcome you to the Fall 2016 semester of English 282, Coming of Age. I hope most of you have already seen the course description, but here it is. It tells you this class is about two things. First, coming of age from Shakespeare to last year's National Book Award winner, Ta-Nehisi Coates. And second, taking pleasure in reading literary classics. The first is our topic. The second is the most important learning outcome for the class. Now, of course, there's a connection. Since most college students are facing the challenges of maturing into adulthood on a personal level, I hope the topic will make it easier for you to relate to the readings. To appreciate a literary classic isn't as easy, after all, as laughing at yesterday's Facebook meme. These works come to us across the centuries. For this very reason, they have a lot to tell us about where we come from, but they also ask us to make a special effort. We have to stretch our minds to understand the strangeness of the past. Why do we make this effort? Because gaining historical perspective on ourselves and on our moment in history is central to our intellectual coming of age. You come to know yourself more fully by encountering the strangeness of the past, and this is a transition most of us go through in our early 20s. We start to gain a sense of history. That's why we start the semester with a counterexample, a work that challenges the very assumptions the course is based on. A Midsummer Night's Dream is a courtship story about four young lovers that is not about coming of age. We'll be asking what assumptions about human nature, about love and sexuality, about what a self is, are reflected in A Midsummer Night's Dream, and how they differ from our culture's belief in personal maturity as the basis of happiness. Dream is a beautiful, complex, hilarious romantic comedy, but its four young lovers, Hermia, Demetrius, Helena, and Lysander, gain their happy endings not because they change or grow wiser or gain insight into themselves, but because they are lucky. Magic, not maturity, brings happiness in the Athens of Shakespeare's play. There's a moment near the end of the play when the characters try to understand what has happened in the forest overnight. What stories can they tell that will make sense of their experiences? This is a question we all face, isn't it? We explain who we are to ourselves or to others by telling stories, don't we? You come to college, you meet new people from other places, and how do you get to know them? How do you form friendships and relationships? Isn't it by telling your story and listening to theirs? You have a new experience, maybe something that shakes you up or forces you to question your beliefs. How do you make sense of that? Most people do it by telling themselves a story. This is what happened. This is how it fits into my life. There's actually scientific evidence to suggest that getting better at telling our stories can make us happier and healthier. You can think of this class as a self-conscious effort to extend the process Shakespeare's characters begin when they wake up confused in the forest. We'll be looking at the way literary characters struggle to understand themselves and their lives through the stories they tell. And we'll be reflecting on how their stories resemble our own and how they differ. From the strange, magical woods outside Athens, we will travel to a country village in southern England at the end of the 18th century. The focus will be on marriage again, for courtship and marriage form a key rite of passage in our culture's notions about coming of age. How do we go from being a son or daughter in one family to establishing a new and different family of our own? Elizabeth Bennet, the protagonist of Jane Austen's Pride and Prejudice, definitely has to make mistakes and learn from them in order to find happiness as an adult. Her world is very different from the one Shakespeare's characters inhabit, and the story she learns to tell about herself is different too. From Jane Austen, we turn to Charles Dickens. Great Expectations is the anchor for our syllabus because it is explicitly about the protagonist's struggle to overcome the illusions that prevent him from telling his own story faithfully. Unlike Pride and Prejudice, Great Expectations is a first-person narrative, and it turns on the challenges young Pip must face in order to become his own narrator, looking back to tell his coming-of-age story with a combination of sympathy, sadness, and amused understanding. Austen and Dickens are both 19th century English novelists. Austen's novel, set near the end of the previous century, was written in 1813. The Action of Great Expectations, written in 1860 and 61, begins in 1812, just about the time Jane Austen was finishing Pride and Prejudice. From Dickens's Victorian London, we travel next to Chicago in the 1930s, where we witness the struggles of Richard Wright's Bigger Thomas, a 20-year-old black man trapped in an urban ghetto, staring at an election poster that says, "You can't win." Bigger's story provides another kind of test for our notion of coming of age, because it's an open question whether he can, or what it might even mean for him to do so. What can an adolescent male do in a society that denies him his manhood? Published in 1940, Native Son asks questions that are just as urgent and just as difficult today as they were in the America of the Great Depression. From Wright's novel, we will turn to a classic Hollywood comedy, The Philadelphia Story, directed by George Cukor and starring Katharine Hepburn along with Cary Grant and James Stewart. Cukor's film, based on a Broadway play by Philip Berry, is fascinating in its own right, but it's even more intriguing when compared to Native Son. The film opened in movie theaters in the autumn of 1940, the same year Wright's novel was published. Although they're exactly contemporary, the film and the novel look like complete opposites. One is a tragedy about a young black male growing up on the south side of Chicago. The other, a romantic comedy about a young female socialite from the Philadelphia Main Line, awash in champagne, privilege, and old money. But beneath these contrasts, we will find some surprising similarities. Both characters inhabit the same 1930s America, and both face obstacles that force us to ask whether they really do come of age. In considering their stories, especially the struggle for control over who gets to tell their stories, we will find ourselves confronting issues of race, economic class, sexuality, and gender that are very much a part of our own experience today. We end the semester with a book published just last year, Between the World and Me, by Ta-Nehisi Coates, won the 2015 National Book Award for nonfiction. It's a memoir, so even though it isn't technically fiction, it fits our syllabus like a glove. Coates offers his story as an open letter to his own teenage son about what it's like to grow up black in contemporary America. It's a powerful, disturbing, beautifully written account. Your challenge, at the end of the semester, will be to show that you've come of age as a reader. By the time we finish The Philadelphia Story in the middle of November, you'll have watched 37 of these video mini-lectures, ranging in length from 5 to 15 minutes, about the works we're studying. But when we get to Coates, there are no mini-lectures. It's just you and the book, and you'll be challenged to work out your own responses in conversation with me and your classmates and with the critics whose reviews of this work are scattered across the internet. Your concluding assignment for the class will be to write your own review of Coates's memoir, agreeing or disagreeing with previous reviews, and coming to your own conclusions about the meaning and value of this particular coming-of-age story. So far, I haven't said much about the experimental format of this course, but it's another way in which I'm asking you to come of age as college students. We're attempting something that may not be possible. That's what experiment means. We don't know if it'll work until we try it. The format is what's known as a flipped classroom, and the experiment is to implement this strategy in a course that enrolls up to 250 students and has traditionally been referred to as a large lecture. As you may know, this format means we take what used to be the lectures and make them available outside of class in the form of short videos like this one. In the auditorium, the lectures are replaced by what my students last fall named anti-lectures. Anti-lectures involve active learning, with handheld microphones moving around the room in a town hall-style discussion. We tried this for the first time last fall. The students were good sports. They offered lots of feedback, and based on their advice, we've made many changes. We've cut back the amount of reading so that you can spend more time on the works we do read. We got rid of the eye clickers and changed the quizzes so you can take them outside of class too. We've changed the midterm and the final exam so that they test your understanding of the works you've read rather than your ability to memorize names and places. We've reorganized the grade center on Blackboard to make it less confusing. And I've prepared specific discussion prompts for each anti-lecture, so you'll have a better idea of how to prepare. I hope these changes will improve your experience in the class, but I'm not forgetting what the word experiment means. Nobody's done this kind of thing before, not on this scale. Maybe it just won't work. How well it works is going to come down to you. Active learning means that you have to take the initiative. You have to ask questions, offer ideas, engage with the readings and your classmates. I know it's one thing to do that in a small room with 20 other students. To do it in a big auditorium is intimidating. And it's counterintuitive. Everything about the physical space, the stage, the auditorium seating, the sheer scale of things, dictates passivity. You sit there feeling invisible, even though the fact is I can see each and every one of you with perfect clarity. You feel invisible because you feel anonymous, and you feel anonymous because the lecture format is so impersonal. Lectures feel like words addressed to no one. The question for our class, then, is whether you're willing to join with me in the effort to break through this wall of anonymity. We know that students overwhelmingly dislike the traditional lecture format, and we know why. It's not exactly a mystery. Will you help me try to find a better way? In a sense, I've done most of my work for this class already. I still have to show up ready to interact with you, ready to think on my feet instead of reading from notes. And as you can see, I do like my work. But for a class like this one, the real preparation takes place beforehand in the hundreds and hundreds of hours I spend writing and rewriting the lectures, designing and redesigning the slide sets, recording and editing the videos, redoing the videos again, planning the assignments, and coming up with discussion prompts. I'm not complaining. I volunteered to do this, and I've enjoyed the work it took to create these materials, even when I was recording the same mini-lecture for the 5th or 6th time, or sometimes for the 10th time, to try and get it right. But to be completely honest with you, running a big class like this can be exhausting and discouraging. I know students often feel that way, especially at crunch time, so all I'm really saying is that we're all in this together. So, will you do what you can to help me make this the best course it can possibly be? There are lots of ways for you to interact, but first and foremost, do the reading. That's the whole point of the class, to give you the skills needed to take pleasure in classic works of literature. 10, 20, or 40 years from now, you won't remember the plots or the discussion questions, but if you've come of age as a reader, if you've developed the ability to take pleasure in really great literary works, then this class will have contributed to the quality of your life. And that's what it's for. That's why I'm here, to try and help you grow up to be that kind of reader. If the first thing is to do the reading, the second thing is to show up. Woody Allen once said that 80% of success in life is just showing up. And I think it's about 80% of what it takes to do well in this class. Do the reading, and then show up. But that's not all. That would be true for any class. For this class to be successful, you also need to stick your neck out and participate in your discussion sections and in the anti-lectures. It's okay to be wrong, just please don't be mute. Because without your willing participation, I can tell you what will happen during the anti-lectures. Nothing. I'll be standing up there in front of you all with a microphone clipped to my tie, waiting, listening, hoping to hear from you, and dying a slow death in the huge silence of the auditorium. Here are the discussion prompts for the first anti-lecture. You need to get on the course Blackboard site and read the syllabus. It's important to know what the course policies are and to be sure you understand them. The second prompt asks you to speculate. There's a list of topics that connect the different works on our syllabus. We'll return to these topics many times in the weeks to come. For now, I just want you to imagine what they might mean. Whether you're right or wrong isn't important. What matters is for me to find out what you already know and how you're thinking. It's a get-acquainted exercise, so all you have to do in order to be successful is show up and participate. That's not too much to ask, is it?